Well, one of the things I noticed that I did different between my on-campus classes and my hybrid classes was writing. Whenever I actually taught an on-campus class, I would give all kinds of little short writing assignments to sort of help students investigate some of the more difficult topics and sort of think through them at a higher level. And I realized that that was an important piece that was completely missing in the online environment, and I couldn't sacrifice on-campus lab time for that. And so I decided that what might be an interesting thing to look at is how could we modify those writing assignments, put them into the online environment, and then most importantly, would it actually have a positive effect on students' performance, their attitudes, and so forth? Well, I can tell you a little bit about my project. So this is the poster I used when I presented at the American Society for Microbiology Undergraduate Educators Conference. And basically it outlines my entire research project, in which I basically took data from the fall of 2009, two microbiology hybrid courses in which I had done nothing different than just teach how I had always taught the hybrid classes, so no writing activities whatsoever. And then I took all of their exams, saved them so that I had the data to kind of collect later on. During the spring of 2010 then, I also had two microbiology hybrid classes, and I gave the exact same exams. But what I did differently this time was I incorporated a lot of very short writing assignments on the discussion board in D2L. Of my experiment, I also did a lot of extensive surveying of my students, because I also wanted to get that sort of effective feedback. How did you feel about these assignments? Were they worthwhile? How important do you think they were towards your actual performance? Which ones helped you the most? And so forth. And I got a lot of really positive feedback, and I put some of their general quotes on my poster as well, just showing that students really did see that it was an effective means of teaching online. Like I said, I kept the exams from both the fall semester and the spring semester, and I actually looked at it in two different ways. I have two-part exams, one of them being the objective style questions that you would put on a Scantron form, and then the other half of the exam is written. So writing compare and contrast statements, short answers, some of the more, extensive essay paragraphs and so forth. So I actually looked at the data on both of those exams areas separately, so it wasn't just comparing exam 1 or exam 2 to exam 2 and exam 3 to exam 3, but also within those separate sections. And what I found was that they actually did better on both parts. So I wasn't just increasing their ability to write on an exam, but there was obviously a better understanding of the concepts because they were writing about them, or at least that's what I believe, so that it allowed them to answer the objective style questions better as well. Data-wise, I have three major comparisons on the poster. The first one was looking at the actual performance on the written exams between the fall students that did not take or do anything online in terms of writing, and the students in the spring that did. And the green line at the top was my spring students on exam 2, 3, and 4, compared to the yellow line, which is a little bit lower in the students that did not have that experience. And so the average, it was sometimes a letter grade or more different in the overall exam performance of the course, of all the students in the course. Between those, it was basically two sections versus two sections of data. So that was, that was interesting. It definitely showed at least something positive. The other one here is the average course grades, and they basically went from an 81 to an 83% average across the for the final course grade across all students. And then the last one, and this one was really, really important to me, and that is retaining my students and keeping them for the long haul in a class that's traditionally thought to be very difficult. And it basically went from in the 50s, retaining about 50% of my students, to retaining about 75% of my students. So to me that was significant, but what that told me is even if the performance quantitatively was slight or maybe differs from semester to semester just based on student population, I think a lot of times retention comes from students' perspective of the course, their motivation in the course, and basically their feelings as if their feeling if they actually can be successful often plays a role in whether they are. And so I feel like when I read a lot of their results in the surveys, I saw that they personally felt motivated, they personally felt like they'd been given the tools to succeed. I'd like to think that it matters, and I certainly didn't see any negative trend whatsoever, not even in the way students perceived it, and so I would see no reason to stop doing it, and that's actually why I haven't. But that is probably the hardest thing, is coming up with a project where we are trying to see if students have really learned something, and first of all, controlling for variables, and then second of all, just how do we really know that they learned? I mean, I was basing it based on 3 traditional format exams, and maybe that's not the way that every student will excel, and so that makes it hard to see. I think the exam showed that they learned the exam material, but I can't guarantee that they learned everything I wanted them to learn about microbiology. So that's where I find the hardest struggle, is really knowing how to design a project to know if they really understand a concept. It was a great project. Like I said, I've continued it. I actually do it in my anatomy physiology hybrid now too. So it's something that I've always stood on writing. Being part of the WAC committee when I was first a faculty member here, and learning about the value of writing even in the context of classes like science, I definitely believe in that, and I took it so strongly in my traditional classes. I'm just glad that I found a way to sort of do it in the hybrid environment too. The hardest part, in terms of what I did to help students learn, is the time commitment involved for faculty to monitor those discussions and to grade those discussions and read students posting and provide feedback in a tactful way. And so I've adapted a lot of them to have students providing feedback for student posts rather than me always having to be the one that weighs in on all of the discussions. So it's a big time commitment, but I definitely think that there's some good positive value to it. And that's it.